highlighting 12 gift plants before Christmas for you in case you want to add any plants to your gift or wish list. And one of the first ones we want to talk about is a Norfolk Island pine, and it was so big here in the greenhouse on this particular rainy day that we weren't able to bring it into this particular one. So we're just going to show you some footage of it. Now this particular one is about 6 or 7 feet high, which means it's really a pretty old plant for an indoor plant. But you can purchase them a lot smaller, say in a 4 or 6 inch pot to start with. But the interesting thing about the Norfolk Island pine, it's actually one of the only conifers that can be grown indoors very successfully. Now it's native to the Norfolk Islands of Australia, and that's where it's really not very cold conditions, so it doesn't do well outside in Oklahoma, and that's why we grow it as an indoor plant. But if you know people who live, say, like in South Florida where it's tropical, or southern Texas, you'll see them occasionally towering as high as 100 to 200 feet above homes, where they stick out kind of like a sore thumb in a way, because they're not a native plant, but they're a nice conifer, and they're only going to get maybe anywhere from 9 to 10 feet wide. But back inside, again, it's a nice green texture, and it looks nice for the holidays. You'll see people decorating them with lights, and I'd encourage you to make sure you put small lights on them where they'll get too hot, and smaller ornaments. And also, the Norfolk Island pine really does better if it gets bright light. Also, don't let the soil dry out as consistently as you would at some of the other plants. It needs a little bit more consistent moisture. And really, with this particular one, it's very hard to propagate. So I'd leave that to the professionals and just start out with smaller plants. But they don't grow very fast inside, but a nice alternative to Christmas ideas and Christmas decorations. Now, another one that we don't think of often as an indoor plant is Azalea. And I have one here in front of me with a pinkish color, and the particular cultivar is solitaire. Most of us are familiar with azaleas from the eastern part of the state, where they grow in protected areas, moist soil, they like acidic conditions, and they bloom in early spring with some really bright, vibrant colors. But you'll see a lot of them showing up in florist situations that are used indoors. Now the blooms are going to last for a couple of weeks, and the thing about this particular azalea, it needs a dormancy just like a lot of other plants, just like the ones outside, before it will ever trigger blooms. So most of the time before the grower gets them, they've been pre-treated with a cold or a dormant period to formulate the buds and initiate the flowering. Now, the only way to know if your azalea is going to be hardy outside is to ask, because some of them are not hardy in Oklahoma conditions. And I'd encourage you to definitely be observant of the root system. They're very small, fibrous roots, and it's real easy for them to get root bound, like this particular one. So that means it's going to dry out inside, and you need to keep it consistently moist because it dries out so quickly. And if you were to try to replant it, it's going to need a lot of breaking apart to initiate new growth, and chances are it's better to keep it inside and try to get it to make it through the winter before you ever try to put it outside to start with. And just like the traditional azalea, again, it needs consistent moisture. If you're going to fertilize it after it's through blooming, use an acidic type fertilizer. Really, there's no need to fertilize it while it's blooming. And also, if you're going to try to propagate it with cuttings, it's a little bit more risky too, but easier than the Norfolk Island pine. So again, azaleas, the colors are very obvious and bright and brilliant, and a nice selection, and really complement a lot of the Christmassy type colors to start with. Now the next one is kind of a traditional plant called an arrowhead vine. This is a common one that's been around for years. A lot of our grandparents used to have these kinds of plants. I know I got this cutting from my mom, and I've had it for quite a while. It's a vining plant traditionally. It gets its name arrowhead because of some of the foliage is the shape of an arrowhead. So I've been trimming and cutting it back to keep it a little bit more bushy because it can become very aggressive. Some of them are variegated foliage, and really that's not that much to speak of for a holiday type appearance. But look at this new cultivar called infrared, and it's kind of a pinkish color. It's really not any showy flowers, it's strictly for the foliage, but that would look wonderful with a Victorian type decoration during the Christmas season. And they're poinsettias that would complement a really interesting texture and foliage. And they're even selling them now with the lacier type foliage, which you'll see here on this particular one called Flutterbee, is that cultivar. Now these are probably the easiest plant to grow of all the ones that we're going to highlight on our season plants. They like a little bit warmer conditions in the house and moist soils, but a little bit of drying out in between waterings, fertilizing as you see the growth. Again, they may not grow as much during the winter time, so be careful on that. But again, Arrowhead Vine or Syngonium is the genus, and it's probably, again, one of the most undemanding plants and very, very easy to propagate through division, cuttings, even in water, so they're easy to give cuttings to your friends. Now the last one is one that most of us have seen. It's called Kalanchoe or Kalanchoe, depending on which part of the state you're from, maybe, and how you pronounce it. It is very vibrant colors. Again, you'll see this pot has 3 different colors of pink, kind of a hotter pink, almost a purplish color, and a yellow, so there's a wide range of colors. Notice too that the foliage is succulent in appearance, and that means you've got to be careful on the watering. Overwatering is probably the fastest way to kill a Kalanchoe. Now these flowers can last up to 2 to 3 months under optimum conditions. When you have them inside, they like bright light again. Be careful on the watering, and also they like temperatures that are a little bit warmer too compared to most plants. Now the thing about the Kalanchoes too, very similar to some of the other plants we've talked about, once they're through blooming you can trim the blooms back, but really most people just pitch them because it's very hard to get them through an entire year and also to trigger them to bloom. But if you want to try your hand at getting them to rebloom, once they're through blooming, trim off the color, the flower stalks, and then cut back on the water, kind of let them go dormant again. But also be careful on your fertilizing. And one of the best things to do, don't repot them just every year. They like to be root bound to initiate flowering. And then come, say, this fall, what you would do is put them in shorter daylights. They need about 15 to 16 hours of darkness at night. Cut back on the watering, give them cooler temperatures, and you can generate maybe some new blooms to bloom around the holidays for you. So they need that dormancy too, and it's really triggered just like, say, with poinsettias, the shorter days and the cooler temperatures and cutting back on the water will force that growth. So you can try your hand at it, but again, it's kind of difficult to do. Just some more options, again, for maybe gift ideas, but remember when you're purchasing them, again, don't forget to protect them when you're taking them out to the car with either a plant sleeve where you can drop them in or just covering them up with a paper bag, because they can get cold damage sitting in the car or taking them outside from the store to your car. And again, there's a fact sheet available at your county extension office, 6411, on houseplant care that talks about general care. And another good gift idea is a new magazine out called Houseplant Magazine. It's been out about a year, that highlights a lot of new cultivars and propagation techniques and just how to grow houseplants in general, and it's available at a lot of the bookstores. Really a nice complement for houseplants. And again, be sure and check those garden centers because there's really a lot of nice options for houseplant gifts.